Welcome back to the Valor Flight Crew podcast, hosted by Echo and brought to you by Vertical Helicast and Vertical Valor magazine. Today, we sit down with a team from Carilion Life-Guard for a groundbreaking conversation about one of the most forward-leaning safety initiatives in the industry, their Incapacitated pilot program. In this episode, we explore how this effort came to life, its origins, its challenges, and the meticulous procedures designed to protect crews when seconds matter. The Carilion team walks us through the training, communication strategies, and human factors that drive their approach, as well as the technological integrations that enhance situational awareness and safety in the cockpit. You'll hear candid insights about overcoming resistance, strengthening CRM, and shaping protocols that crews can trust in high-stress environments. From checklist discipline to crew camaraderie, this conversation underscores the shared responsibility we all carry when it comes to safety. And as we look ahead, the team shares an exciting vision for the future where emerging technologies and increased automation may one day transform how we respond when a pilot becomes incapacitated. So strap in as this forward-thinking episode blends innovation, teamwork, and mission-focused readiness at every level. Let's get into it. Thank you to our sponsors, Metro Aviation, Airbus, and Precision Aviation Group.
Welcome to the Valor Flight Crew podcast. Brought to you by Vertical Helicasts and Vertical Valor magazine. Produced in partnership with Echo, Every Coast Helicopter Operations. The Valor Flight Crew podcast promotes the personnel and life-saving equipment behind helicopter air ambulance services. Join hosts Mike Fideli and Blake Schreider for in-depth interviews and expert insights from air medical personnel, pilots, communication specialists, and maintenance crews who play critical roles in airborne emergency response.
Line 1 accepting.
Copy, Line 1, gotcha, accepting. You're going to be talking to Red Feather 1 on LCEMS.
I have a crew member, a coworker, that they experienced an incapacitated pilot a long time ago. They were on autopilot, they were flying. The pilot had a syncopal episode, was unconscious for a few moments up front. And I commend them for not panicking. They made radio calls that the aircraft was level, flying straight. And then they really tried to focus what was going on with the pilot. And it wasn't anything life threatening. And I know that's, on the outside looking in, maybe it doesn't sound like that, but they were able to also focus on the pilot and not make any like rash decisions or think like this was it and we have to do something extreme. I think there was also that focus that they recognized the aircraft was stabilized. They were able to make the radio calls and they were able to like pay attention and really kind of focus on treating the pilot. And then the pilot was able to come to, and they were able to help up front assist and help get that pilot back to land the aircraft safely. So do you guys go further into, I guess, Scott, if you can answer, from a medical crew perspective on, is there anything set on how to treat the pilot, or is it really just focused on making sure they're conscious and can follow commands and then just getting the aircraft back on the ground?
Yeah, I think just we've talked about just some of the stuff like that we could do, what kind of medical emergencies we could potentially treat, like a low sugar signal episode, something like that. But,
right.
I think it's going to probably be dependent on what's.
Yeah, I definitely say it's kind of situationally dependent. And also, it's going to depend on the level of comfort of the crew. Like, a newer crew member may not have been able to maintain composure like you were talking about, the difference there. But we hope that we are instilling those kind of things, into the flight crew as we get through these trainings, to be calm and start thinking, once you get the helicopter stabilized and in level flight and you're not going to, run into anything, to kind of take a deep breath and slow down and see what you can do to solve the problem on board. And then if not, you're going to continue with those other steps and trying to get to a safe place.
Got it.
Yeah, I think, from the medical crew perspective, sitting up front, like I think at first just in shock, like how many buttons and levers and all of the things. And, obviously it's been in a couple different airframes that I've flown in, but, I was just like enamored by like, how do you know what all of this stuff does? And I think that can be very overwhelming for a new crew member to not necessarily have that, like if one of these emergencies would happen, for them to even be able to process where to go and what to push. And so the fact that you guys have been able to kind of like break it down into these, initial simple 5 steps and then moving on with the process, I think is something that's extremely helpful, especially in those high stress environments. Cause we think about, we get in the middle of that high stress environment and all of a sudden, we don't have any of those normal motor functions that we should anymore. And we can't even formulate words at that point. So I think that's just, it's a testament to like, the systems that we have in place in these aircraft. It's a testament to the training that you guys have gone through as pilots and the understanding that you have of all of those avionics, and then the willingness of those crew members to be able to be an active part in that. And if I recall correctly, you guys you've initially focused on the 135, but then that's been expanded. Am I correct in saying that there are other airframes that do have the same procedures that you guys were able to kind of help formulate based off of what you guys implemented?
Yeah, so MedTrans, the safety side of the house, probably in conjunction with our instructor cadre, they adapted the procedures that we had for the P2 Plus to the other airframes that MedTrans had on their certificate at the time. So the 407, they have the H135 model, I believe the H130 as well. But so MedTrans took that on, and that's just something that we're looking forward to do, as you would do with any kind of process, is to revalidate it. And as we get our H135s here in the coming years, now we'll have to become familiar with the procedures for that airframe. And incidentally, we'll have to maintain the knowledge for the P2 Plus, right? So because our spare aircraft for some time is probably not going to be a H model, it's going to be a P2 Plus.
Right.
So we'll have to keep this information on board as well.
And I think, that's commendable for that, all of your team at MedTrans to be able to go through those extra steps and be able to put those processes in place for all of those aircraft. And, would love to see that trend continue. But I'm curious as to how that, or what was the challenge? Did you have any challenges along the way with getting the FAA on board and formulating those processes together, and what were their concerns moving forward with this process, and how did that relationship transpire for all parties to be on board with all of this? Because I feel like that's certainly got to be an active part of, like, it's all well and good to have this idea, it's all well and good to have this process in place, and for you guys, the 4 of you to sit down and formulate this protocol for what happens if somebody's incapacitated. But unless you have the buy-in from both leadership teams and the buy-in from OCC and the buy-in from especially the FAA, like, how do you move forward with those kind of processes, and what was that relationship like?
Well, I think that, like Sid said earlier, we had immediate buy-in from our program director, and that was worth, that was priceless in this discussion. As Carilion as the customer, if you will, in a contractual sense with MedTrans, it helped immensely that our program manager was supportive of us and supportive of the work we were trying to do. So we were the incapacitated pilot working group. And we met, routinely as we developed these procedures, and had those discussions with Carilion and with MedTrans, and then of course MedTrans was on board. But it was very interesting in that we, as the incapacitated pilot working group, we didn't directly take our product, if you will, to the FAA. Carilion and MedTrans, the leadership from each of our respective companies, is who sat down with FAA, and so fortunately we had done our due diligence, and they were up to speed on all things that we were working on, and then honestly had a very a good sit down with the FAA and got the head nod in the affirmative. And so then the walk phase was completed. So that was a huge. But we got that information that we had won the day, and that the FAA approved our stabilized the aircraft and treat the pilot procedures. It was a huge win for us. And of course, we got excited and we start thinking about the next, the run phase. And, it's like, everything with time, right? We gotta, you can't ask for the world all in one day. But, we as a group developed procedures for our aircraft. But what if a pilot could not be revived? There's a day in our future, hopefully, that we can, get that in front of the FAA. And I think the fact that we have technology that's helping to solve this problem will be a catalyst for that, but then also help answer that question, because we're getting into a world where the aircraft is going to be doing more of the flying and less crew member manipulation of an autopilot control panel, or as far as steering the aircraft left and right or climbing, those kind of things. So I think that will help us. We're excited about that. That's one of the things, we have to give kudos to you guys for inquiring about this podcast, because it forced us to kind of brush the dust off some things that we had just kind of been sitting on the shelf, so to speak, for a little bit. And you guys, and in light of the fact that we're getting some new aircraft here in the new year, that's going to be, kind of lit a fire for us to reevaluate where we're at and where we want to go, and make sure that our crews are trained up and that our pilots are trained up. We have new pilots, since we set out to do this and all that kind of stuff.
Thank you to our sponsor, Metro Aviation. Metro Aviation, the world's largest family-owned air medical operator, offers comprehensive aircraft services with 140 plus aircraft in over 25 states. The Completion Center installs medical and law enforcement kits and avionics, serving diverse aviation needs including offshore, utility, VIP, and corporate sectors.
You mentioned the crawl walk. The run could be endless almost, not to say the possibilities are endless, but I think that as the technology evolves and changes, and with the new airframes, that run process could be pretty lengthy. So I guess with that said, in my mind, I think if you were to throw me in a sim, my smooth brain is like, yeah, I could totally land this. Like, I have zero training, but I've played PlayStation.
All the confidence in the world.
Yeah, I would clearly be able to do it, right? But so as this process keeps going, so this technology, airframes are going to change. How do you maintain the proficiency for crew members and everybody coming in to keep up with this initiative, to keep it going and to keep it fresh? I
think, the invite to do the podcast with you guys really did make us think about the future. So in this short time that we've been kind of prepping and regrouping, we've kind of come up with an idea to do a big kind of training push for 2026, not only on the current aircraft, but once all of our pilots have been behind the controls of the H-135 and validate those procedures, we'll continue right into that. And then the question is, how do you keep doing both airframes when you primarily are flying one?
Right.
So in the long term, I think it'll be good, because it's refocused us and kind of identified some weaknesses. And Scott mentioned, we have a lot of new med crew. We have several new pilots. It's just the right time to bring it up again and make sure that everybody's on the same page.
And potentially, with helionics, it's simpler. So it's a lot easier. The steps he provided for the P2 Plus, very realistic, very trainable. But, with the H model, you just double tap one button and it stabilizes there.
That's awesome.
So that's an easy add-on. The technology is a force multiplier with what we're talking about.
You guys feel benefit from maybe in the future, because we talked about this at some point in our program, hearing what you guys were doing, and just to have crew members that, obviously not sending every crew member, but maybe some your newer and senior crew members, maybe just tagging along when pilots go for annual training, every 6 months, and doing the recurrent, maybe just being in the simulator to sit back? Or I'm saying, I don't know if that's a possibility, but has any talk of that, or pilots, do you see any benefit to maybe having some of the med crew just to see what you guys have to go through as far as your training, and just does that kind of open up that possibility to just more awareness of what you guys are going through, and maybe some of the characteristics of how the aircraft is working?
Well, we do that with the one training event. The crew will be in the back.
Okay.
The curtains are up, so it's kind of hard to see up front. So certainly, training opportunity in the simulator.
No, we did have some. We did have, was it 3 or 4 of them? Two didn't get to go to the simulator.
Oh, cool.
And do some, they kind of bring back, their experience to the other crews.
Yeah.
It's a money thing, right?
Yeah,
it's
for sure.
It's expensive.
Everything. Yeah.
And so it's expensive and it takes time. And, there's simulators are expensive and they also take time. So, that's, we would love to, get every one of our crew members down to the sim with us. But, it was brought up years ago, and something that might even be a possibility for us is some of the more inexpensive methods through virtual reality and the
Microsoft Flight Sim with Helionics is, what I'm wondering if the button pushes would make it a realistic procedure trainer, because you don't need that tactile feedback loop. You just need the buttons to be accurate for the autopilot modes.
And that muscle memory and doing that sequential step process, I think would, and as you try to play that scenario in your head, you're doing the steps.
And I really like that you guys do the regular training, right? You're out on the dead legs of those flights and you're suddenly having, an incapacitated moment and the crew members being able to jump in. I think that reiteration allows the crew members, at least I'm hoping so, from the med crew side of the house, you guys can certainly answer for me, but increases your confidence, increases your abilities, increases, the recognition that you have in that moment and your ability to really perform those functions. And I'm sure that gives you guys as a team an increased confidence boost too. And certainly correct me if I'm wrong with that, but.
Yeah, I think it does. I was thinking about this too. I don't fly full time anymore. So I've noticed myself when I do fly, if I'm up front thinking about this stuff, because I haven't had my eyes on it, and
it brings a different perspective, right?
Yeah, and so it makes me refresh in my mind what we need to do, to stabilize them.
And I was kind of wondering, as an unintended consequence, what you guys thought, because especially during COVID, we're doing really long flights through the night, that kind of thing, and over the years, especially with cameras being in cockpits and stuff, people just falling asleep and rolled the aircraft over and stuff like that. With just bringing up on a regular basis the potential for incapacitated pilot, it feels like, and I don't know if it's true, that like when we're on those long legs, people are checking on. They'll say something because, in the back of their mind, they think it's possible because, once a year or more, we're kind of asking about it. Do you guys think that's true? Is that in the back of your mind more with these dead legs?
Yeah. And we've had some really long dead legs at night, like you're saying. And I think that's more and more on my mind, at least, and I hope on everybody's mind, is to make sure that you're okay. Because, you're the one we're relying on to get us where we're going. And I could see it being very easy to fall asleep. So, trying to keep the conversation going, which with you, Ty, is usually pretty easy.
Wow.
and weird.
Shots fired across the other side of the room.
No, it's good though.
It's deserved.
And I think that's part of the rapport that it's important to have with the whole crew. Like, everybody needs to understand each other. We need to know when we're not fit or when something is out of whack. And we need to speak up, right?
Yeah.
But having a lively and fun conversation on the dead leg is an easy way to make sure everybody's okay.
Hopefully with snacks and drinks if the crew brought us from the EMS room.
Right.
When you have some,
we try.
Depends how nice you are to us. That's no way there.
That's fair
but I love that. It's that sharing of information back and forth, right?
Yeah.
I think that we do that a lot as crews. And I love learning about what happens in the front of the aircraft, but I also enjoy when my pilots are kind of asking questions. They're intrigued about what's happening in the back. And, I'll never forget, some of the moments we're flying along, and it wasn't a super critical patient, but we're kind of discussing back and forth between the med crew as to what route we should go or what we should do next, medication wise or treatment wise. And then you just hear a voice from the front of the aircraft. Did you think about etomidate 0.3 milligrams per kilogram? Where are you pulling this
per
from?
kilo. No, that's tight for us. He knows our protocols better than we do.
But I think, it helps build that camaraderie back and forth.
Oh, it's awesome.
It is
So to
fun.
be able to
And-
have those conversations is awesome.
Yeah, and one of those too, mitigating kind of things you wouldn't really think about is, the crew brief is probably, and I'm making a number up, a 60% solution for an incapacitated pilot. If this guy's up there and he just looks bad, maybe you should dig a little deeper into how it's feeling. I'm not a medical person, so that may be pretty ignorant. That's why I'm wondering what you guys think about that.
Yeah, I think we're good about catching stuff like that on briefing for sure.
Yeah, that's
Or is somebody not feeling well? They have other stuff going on at home, some sort of distraction, So I think we all spend a lot of time together. So I think it's easy for us to pick up on that in that morning brief and be able to speak up and say something.
Yeah, and that's what we do have to learn when we have, we have some new folks here, and we got to learn what their normal is.
Mm-hmm.
And so then if they're not operating on their normal, our spidey senses are peaked, and we know to ask questions.
Are any of us really normal though in this job? I'm just asking for a friend.
Right.
I'm a GCS of 12 baseline, so everybody's got that now.
I love it.
Oh man, I think that we talk about that, just that camaraderie, but just having those you don't even have to do this procedure or checklist. You could head it off at the pass by just asking a question, having that conversation. But I also think that really highlights the culture that you guys have at your base, at your program, to one, not only have those discussions, have that conversation during brief, and then to expand and move forward with this procedure. I always preach, please just tell me if you see something off. I've been around, at our base long enough to I have thick skin and no hair. So there's really nothing that you're going to say to me that's going to offend me. But, there's three of us, or, if we're training, there's four of us. We all have an equal part. So I think it's such a great testament to your program and what you're able to bring forward, the culture that you have as far as safety, to really, like you said, eliminate that hopelessness feeling and really just try to make sure that everybody has a part in this and knows that, God forbid, this incident does occur, you have a chance. And I think that really says a lot. And I think that you guys should be 100% commended for all the work that you guys are doing for that.
Thanks to our sponsor, Airbus. Airbus provides the most efficient helicopter solutions to its customers who serve, protect, save lives, and safely carry passengers in demanding environments. Its civil and military helicopters are flying all over the world, making missions possible. Visit airbus.com for more information.
Yeah, thanks. These guys, we've all really worked hard to build a great culture, and it's not easy. Like you said, if you always choose the path of least resistance, nothing improves, egos win and all that. So, with conflict at times is the catalyst to bring about the necessary change to actually improve things versus just always living with the status quo.
I like when you said thick skin. I think that's a key element to this, is like, especially in this crew concept, right? Crew resource management and a very small crew. That we, operate a crew of 3, and you have to have thick skin. You have to come to work with your thick skin on. You have to be able to know your people. You got to be able to accept some criticism. You got to be able to handle problems at the lowest level, and just chalk it up to, hey, it's the crew. The synergy of the crew. We're bigger than than any one of us. Individually, and we've got to have, among other things, thick skin so that we can, be willing to not get defensive if somebody says, "Hey, wait, are you tired? Are you too tired to go fly? Are you?" I got to be able to say, I got to be able to answer honestly and self-evaluate and all those kind of things. So, having thick skin and wearing that to work is very important for a good CRO.
And that can head off almost not this procedure, right? But it could set off those events, right? And it, God forbid this happens, but so now if there's two people, the med crew trying to assist the incapacitated pilot, I know I'll be inside freaking out, but also simultaneously trying to make sure I've got to rein it in, just think, just take a breath and get through this. And what I really like about when we talk about the CRM and mentioning this type of procedure and even just doing it during the briefing, the first 4 or 5 steps, leveling the aircraft, making sure you have the power and making sure you're on the right heading to not hit anything. And you alluded to this earlier, that should buy you that little bit of time to take that. Okay. And then having that good crew resource management. And if I'm up front and then my partner's in the back, hey, what just is going on? What happened? Once you get that kind of set, I know my adrenaline dump, and I'm probably going to start to, this just happened. And I'm really going to rely on my partner to help keep me focused. Because if I'm the one up front, which, predominantly, we are, and that's just, I don't know, that's just kind of how roles are. I'm really going to rely on them to really help guide my thought process as well, because I'm going to need them to make sure that I'm focused and not losing it. So I think it's just such a testament.
Isn't that kind of normal for you, Blake?
Well, yeah, true. That's true. But I think it is that good testament to make sure that we have that chance and we can kind of get into this procedure, get through it correctly, and then really have that good outcome. But it really takes everybody, and it takes everybody's input to have that thought process and not take anything defensively. It's like, hey, we need to get to the point and make sure that we're safe. And I really think that brings home that practice of CRM to really be safe in this process.
You're talking about earlier, so a checklist, right? So a lot of things in aviation and even within the medical field as well, checklists, procedures, how we do it. And Mike mentioned earlier about all of the buttons and switches and levers in a cockpit of an aircraft and all that kind of stuff. And it can be overwhelming. And that's the purpose of these procedures, is to dial someone in, a crew member in, on what is most important right now.
Right.
And so step number 1, like the one thing that will kill you is running into the ground.
Mm-hmm.
So if the autopilot is not engaged, altitude hold to stop a descent or to maintain an altitude. And, so that checklist takes you through what's important, what is most important at that time. The one thing that is just kind of anecdotal, but is also very interesting, is amongst all of this myriad of gauges and switches and levers, that checklist is going to take you through what's most important at the time. But also, once the aircraft is stabilized, one thing that we talk about is what is the most important gauge in the aircraft. And we pose this as a question at Echo, and somebody got it right off the bat. It's the fuel gauge.
Mm.
And the fuel gauge, why is that most important? It's because fuel in gallons, equals flight time.
Mm.
Yep.
And how long do we have to solve the problem that's presented to us? So, is this problem more challenging if we're only at 21 gallons in the main? Yes.
Yeah.
We only have versus 90 gallons, we have an hour and a half to solve this problem of stabilizing and reviving our pilot. So, there's a lot going on in an aircraft's cockpit, from switches, gauges, levers, or whatever else. But that's why, we have a checklist focuses in on what is most important right now. And that gives, ultimately drives hope. And there's a process that's here for me as a crew member to solve this issue. So that gives me hope going into it. It gives me hope when I'm in that scenario. And hopefully we'll it will lead to a good outcome.
Now, you guys mentioned that, we're kind of been, brush off some of the dust and you guys are gearing up for getting new aircraft and starting to move forward and how those procedures or processes may change for you. When we talk about, the implementation of this whole process, when you guys are giving your presentation at Echo, it kind of sounded like you had all of the framework and you were in the process of kind of rolling out what the actual procedure was and getting all of the crews trained up and comfortable. And has any of that changed over that or evolved over that time frame since you guys have given that presentation or the initial implementation of this? And also, I guess the big question is, what's next? Where do you see this going in the future? In your perfect world, like, what would you like to see this program evolve into? Would it be more than just the pushing of buttons? Or would it be, looking at how a crew member can potentially safely get the aircraft on the ground? Like, what's in your perfect world? And obviously, there's still a lot that has to be worked out in that process. But, in your perfect world, what would something like that look like?
Thank you to our sponsor, Precision Aviation Group. Mission-critical operators and fleet managers rely on Precision Aviation Group as a worldwide leading rotor and fixed-wing MRO provider. PAG provides tip-to-tail solutions in 4 MRO segments: avionics, components, engines, and manufacturing DER services. A single point of contact gives you access to over 150 million in inventory globally, 24/7. Just call 800-537-2778. Precision Aviation Group. Others sell parts. We sell support.
Well, the future is the run phase, which is recovering an aircraft if a pilot cannot be revived. And, how do we do that? How do we do that with the technology that we have, with technology that's in the future? Those are all great discussions. Now, we've developed aircraft recovery procedures for the P2 Plus, but there has not been an environment for us to take those forward. The right timing, all this kind of stuff.
Yeah,
we're hoping that as we transition to our new aircraft here with more capability, that'll hopefully be a catalyst for us to have the conversations about the next step. Why are recovery procedures important? Well, it's obvious, right? Because all of this has a very low probability of occurring. Mm. But if it does occur, if there is an incapacitated pilot, the chances of catastrophic results are very high. So, we need to get into that next phase where we're going to figure out how to recover an aircraft. If not, then if a crew has adequately stabilized the aircraft and they're treating up the pilot, but to no avail, now the end for them is going to be when the aircraft runs out of fuel out over for us, west of here over the West Virginia mountains. And then the consequences are going to be dire in that situation. We know what they will be. But if we can develop some procedures that we're going to say right up front, based on current technology, that, hey, it's not going to be a picture perfect landing. It may not even, it may even classify as a crash, right? It may even classify as a crash. But guess what? That crash is going to be, that hard landing or that crash is going to be at a time and a place of the air crew's choosing, because they steered the aircraft to, let's say, towards, for us, Roanoke Regional Airport that has a long, hard surface runway with crash fire rescue on hand. And so what are your chances of survival if the aircraft crashes vicinity of Roanoke Regional Airport or, in that runway environment versus, 50 miles to the west over the West Virginia mountains, right?
Yeah.
So even if the procedures do nothing but get us back, allow the crew to change the location of the crash site or have some input on the crash site, that's a win.
Yeah.
Now through technology and procedures that we've drafted, that I think there's even the likelihood that crews will land and just get out and say, "Hey, here's our pilot. He needs help."
Right.
And I've had the opportunity to run through those procedures and the P2 Plus at one of my simulator events a few years back, and brought the aircraft to a running landing on a runway, stayed upright, and so that it can be done.
Yeah.
And, it certainly can be done as we move forward with more technology.
Yeah. Helionics is, a lot better recovery procedure, and I've been flying an H model a little bit over the last 2 years, and been playing with the recovery procedure and with the two things. One, you can set up the GPS approach with vertical guidance and LPV 20 miles out. It catches the glide slope automatically, and you can drag the speed back to 30 knots while it's on the glide slope versus 60 and a P2 Plus. Wow. And it lines you up on the runway, puts you 200 feet above the ground, lined up with the runway. And then as soon as you hit the runway threshold, you just double click the GTCH, which is a hover hold button, and it brings the aircraft, still without touching any of the controls, to a hover. And then you can bring the aircraft down to 30 feet. And then from there, you can, guarding the cyclonic, but still not having to hover by hand.
Right.
The system, you can, push down on the collective and have it actually touch down on the surface, so that training, yes. Yeah.
That's pretty awesome.
It would take a lot for us to get there to the run phase, but compared to what's required with the P2 Plus procedure, which is also doable,
right?
That technology makes it just so much more realistic.
Yeah, I think that's so awesome to be able to think about what the future could hold for those circumstances. Like, I really hope that we can get to a day in this industry where we never have to worry about another crash happening. And I think the technology is a huge piece of that. But I think all of these other safety measures that, are being implemented, and the processes that you guys are putting in place, and also, for MedTrans to be able to take that to other airframes as well. Like, it just, as a whole, it is continuing to push this industry further down that safety track. And I absolutely love that aspect of it. And I really hope that we do have a day where that never happens again, and we never have to worry about that. But I think that there is those huge pieces of the puzzle, and I'm excited to see where that goes. I'm excited to hopefully be part of that process, and to learn as we're going along, and to see it in action. And just I think that's going to give so many crew members the hope that they don't have to worry about, not coming home at night to their families. I think that it's going to give our patients hope. I think it's going to give everyone else a little piece of that puzzle, and hopefully a little bit of ownership in their own safety and the safety across the industry. So I'm excited to see where it goes, but I'm hoping that, you guys can report back to us, in a year or two, and tell us where things are at now and how that's progressing. Maybe a year or two is a little too short of a time as things are very, I think, crawl, walk, run aspect of it. But I'm looking forward to see where it goes in the future. I think that this is something that I hope that more programs get interested in. I hope that more programs start to push forward and continue to push the bar of how we as crews can deal with, those emergencies should they ever come, and really push that bar of safety so that we all come home at the end of the day.
Well, you mentioned more programs getting on board with these types of procedures, and we know that they are. But one thing that I really hope for is that it goes above and beyond individual programs and individual operators like MedTrans or whatever that are driving this. And I hope and I foresee that we'll see aircraft manufacturers developing these procedures and telling us how they want us to recover their aircraft in these situations.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah.
So I think that's in the future, and I think that will be a key piece of this puzzle in the future for standardization and so forth, where an aircraft manufacturer is telling us how to use their systems to recover their aircraft, instead of all of the Carilion clinics and how many ever are out there kind of stovepiping, if you will, and kind of coming up with what kind of works for us, or what we found to work, or if MedTrans has validated procedures, but do they marry up with what other aircraft operators out there are doing? So let's, if we can push it over to sometime in the future, the aircraft manufacturers, I think would be great. And, not to talk myself out of a job, but But
I was waiting for that comment at some point.
well, what I'm getting at is like optionally piloted aircraft. Those exist. And, when that will be that, we're raving over 4-axis autopilot that we're getting here soon, but maybe in 5 more years, we're raving about
Garmin Auto Land in the aircraft.
auto land or optionally piloted, where it's just a little call button that the crew pushes that says we're an aircraft in distress. And then someone at OCC takes over and lands the aircraft, remotely.
Yeah. Wow. It's cool to think about something like that happening as a backup plan. Yeah.
Yeah. So, it'll come to that. It's just, just takes time, takes money, takes, people thinking outside the box a little bit. And that kind of things.
And the airplane industry, to your point, the manufacturers incorporating Garmin Auto Land, where the passenger just hits the big red button, it checks the weather, shoots the approach, lands itself, hits the brakes. So they just have a lot more single pilot, outfits in the airplane world. So, all of it is there. It just, you need a market, you need a demand,
Yeah, and I think that we're starting to see that in the fixed wing industry and some aircraft that are able to do that. And I just don't think it's quite carried over to the helicopter side of things yet. So it'd be interesting to see how that trend or how that evolves over the next couple of years and where we can go with that technology. Because I think it's going to be a while till we get there, unless we can retrofit some things into some of these systems. It's going to be a while till we can get there as an industry to where that's something that can happen. But I think it's exciting to think about that as a possibility for the future.
Yeah, we primed ourselves because, with, like we said, the industry is, as far as I know, about 100% with autopilots anymore, even in the single engine aircraft. Somebody would need to verify that, so that was the first big step. And now, because the law passed in 2015, it's starting to get more compliance with cockpit recording. So then as we discover how many of these accidents, I'm not saying they are or not, but if they are related to pilot being incapacitated, now you've got the technology to be retrofitted already in the airframes. And now you have an understanding of what, is causing a lot of these crashes that we didn't know the cause of before. And that will allow the investment to be made in the additional system.
I think it just also took a lot for you guys to really show that it was possible. I think that's the probably the biggest first step, and I think, where do we start? I think it really started with you guys really pushing forward for that to really push where this is going to go. And I think that's probably one of the largest hurdles that has been probably overcome in moving in that direction.
And hey, if Scott can do this, I think anybody is probably going to be pretty good, right?
That doesn't bode well for me because he's a lot smarter than I am. That's not good.
No, I certainly appreciate you guys coming on and chatting with us about this today. It's been a phenomenal discussion, and I really thank you guys for being able to share some of your time and your wisdom with us. I hope that we are going to continue to move forward with this in the industry, and I think that you guys really help set that bar as to where we can, just start at. This is obviously the tip of the iceberg, right? But this is something that we can really take forward in the industry, and I commend you guys for doing it. And like I said, I've been waiting to have this conversation for a long time. Getting to listen to you guys down at the beach retreat was phenomenal, but I think it left me with more what ifs and how can I adapt this to my program and where can we go from here? And I don't want to say questions, but it was like, how do I get from point A to point B? And so I was super excited to be able to have you guys on here and kind of discuss that. And I hope that passion is brought over to other agencies so we can continue to push this forward, because this shouldn't just be a company-wide thing. This should be an industry-wide thing.
Yeah.
So really appreciate you guys coming on, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you again to our listeners out there for their continued support of the Vertical Helicast platform and the Valor Flight Crew podcast. If you guys aren't already listening to the rest of our Helicast platforms, head on over to verticalhelicast.com. Make sure you check out the Hangar Z podcast, Helicopter podcast, Rail Rescue podcast, and Vertical MRO podcast. Thanks again for listening, everyone. Have a great one. We'll see you next time. Thanks for joining us for this episode of the Valor Flight Crew podcast. Don't forget to like and subscribe to hear more stories that promote the personnel and equipment behind the missions in public safety aviation. Lastly, stand by for a message from our sponsors.
Thank you to our sponsor, Precision Aviation Group. Mission-critical operators and fleet managers rely on Precision Aviation Group as a worldwide leading rotor and fixed-wing MRO provider. PAG provides tip-to-tail solutions in 4 MRO segments: avionics, components, engines, and manufacturing DER services. A single point of contact gives you access to over 150 million in inventory globally, 24/7. Just call 800-537-2778. Precision Aviation Group. Others sell parts. We sell support. Thanks to our sponsor, Airbus. Airbus provides the most efficient helicopter solutions to its customers who serve, protect, save lives, and safely carry passengers in demanding environments. Its civil and military helicopters are flying all over the world, making missions possible. Visit airbus.com for more information.
Thank you to our sponsor, Metro Aviation. Metro Aviation, the world's largest family-owned aeromedical operator, offers comprehensive aircraft services with 140 plus aircraft in over 25 states. The Completion Center installs medical and law enforcement kits and avionics, serving diverse aviation needs including offshore, utility, VIP, and corporate sectors.
That wraps up this episode of the Valor Flight Crew podcast. A huge thank you to the Carilion Life-Guard team for sharing their insight, their humility, and their commitment to pushing safety forward. Their work on the Incapacitated pilot program is more than a checklist or procedure. It's a reflection of what happens when crews lean into training, embrace communication, and refuse to accept good enough when lives are on the line. Conversations like this remind us that innovation in aviation doesn't start with technology. It starts with people. It starts with crews who are willing to challenge assumptions, refine their craft, and collaborate across disciplines to build something better. Whether it's developing new protocols, implementing new processes, or preparing for the future of autonomous support systems, the spirit of progress is alive and well. To all our listeners across the ECHO community and the industry, thank you for the work you do, for the safety voice you bring to your teams, and for the dedication you carry into every mission. Until next time, stay sharp, stay connected, and stay committed to the standards that keep us flying safely. Be sure to tune in next week for more stories that promote the personnel and life-saving equipment behind helicopter air ambulance services.